countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hubba hubba! We're hoping you love this week's episode of the Last Comic Shop podcast.
That is right. We are opening up the shop to newbies to help them find their way among some rocket ships and people who fix things, I guess.
Yeah. We're keeping the side door open for those alternative types, like things that are a little bit off the beaten path this week.
Ooh,
the stuff that, isn't your standard Marvel DC big two. Oh, no.
Yeah, we are definitely going indie with one of, I think, arguably one of the more famous indie books. At least it was at one point.
You see it referenced so many times, and that is, of course, Love and Rockets.
That's right.
There you go.
I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson, and I'm joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith. And again, we ultimately read the first one from Fantagraphics, Love and Rockets, Volume 1. It's called Maggie the Mechanic, because we wanted to start from the beginning. But there were some folks out there on the forums, the Reddits, that were saying you should start with Volume 2, this Girls from the Hopper.
Yes, I mean, the whole thing is that Love and Rockets is done by two brothers, and one brother did all of his stories set in Palomar, and that was Gilbert. But we read the other set of stories, which was all done by Jaime, and that was the Maggie the Mechanic and her roster of characters, which there are a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all Chicanos, set in sort of a fictional version of Southern California / Northern Mexico.
Yeah, but they've got like hover cars and there's dinosaurs and
apparently that goes away later on, but we're like at the steampunk beginning of it all.
They're in bands. They changed their hair a lot. It's like the 80s X-Men. A new hairstyle, new hair color, like every 10 seconds.
Well, now I know where Dazzler got all her insights from.
Oh, that's true. At one point, I think Maggie has a rogue kind of cut, black with like a white streak, and like it was looking.
Business in front, party in the back. It was, yeah, a lot of them. They all had very similar haircuts. There was times when they were in silhouette that I had a hard time distinguishing between some of the girls.
But before we get to the Love and Rockets review, which will be in our second segment, we thought that we would talk about some other books that folks have been, I don't know, thinking are popular. And at least the folks over at CBR, that's Comic Book Resources, a fantastic website that's been around forever. And still, oftentimes, if you're a comic book fan, you go out there just to see what they're saying.
I was going to say, a lot of CBR is clickbait these days, but Brian Cronin, who's one of their mainstays, he does the comic should be good, and the comic book history is revealed. I'm a big Brian Cronin fan. Anytime he puts something out, I'll take notice.
And so he put out this top 100 comic book storylines master list on January 1st. And this was a master list of top 100 comic book storylines of all time as voted by you, the CBR reader. He's just compiling. He's doing Chad's job, essentially. He's a statistical
one of the
compiler.
reasons I like Brian Cronin. I respect what he does.
He is a man of the Excel sheet.
Sooner or later, we had to talk about this list because it's been going all over our particular chats. And so we thought we'd start this episode with this.
And, dear listeners, if we come across something you think we should read in our year 2026 from this list, please don't hesitate to write in and tell us the stuff you want to hear us cover and talk about. Because things like Love and Rockets, that's another book that wasn't on our radar. But sometimes this is where we come up with these things. So if there's something out there that's like, I wonder what they think about this, let us know.
And you mentioned Love and Rockets. It did fall in. There was a run that fell in 98, Blood of Palomar by Gilbert Hernandez. We are not reading any of the Gilbert stories. So,
all right. Well, since you said 98, let's go at least through 100 through 90. Let's see what the bottom of the list holds. What treasures exist there?
Okay, well, sliding in the last spot is the last Iron Fist story by Ed Brubaker and Matt Fraction and David Aja. And this ran in Immortal Iron Fist 1 through 14 and Civil War and a bunch of other stuff. So,
which is great.
Yes, it is the only Iron Fist omnibus I have. I honestly, I don't know sometimes which is better. That team's run on Iron Fist or that team's run on Hawkeye. It depends on what mood I'm in, because I really love both runs.
The Orson Rand, Iron Fist, all that stuff, the Immortal Weapons, all that's from here.
99, Future Imperfect by Peter David and George Perez from Hulk, Future Imperfect 1 and 2.
Yeah, this one's Hulk Breaks Bad.
I've never read it. There's a lot of Peter David Hulk, which is kind of a blind spot. I have read some. The Wedding of Rick Jones is arguably
and Marlowe.
Great, plus the Bachelor Party issue, but there's some that I just never got around to reading it. So
97, and I think there's a bit of recency bias in this, to be honest, because this should be a lot higher than it is. Demon Bear Saga by Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz.
That we did cover on the last comic shop. So make sure that you're going back into our archives and finding that. We also reviewed New Mutants movie, which is pretty good. Good.
It's a great B movie. That was one of our first shows, I want to say.
Oh yeah. It's worth a watch, and it's worth a listen to the episode.
96 was Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Boy on Earth.
I picked that up for $1 at the library. It is a weird looking book. I might make you guys read that at some point.
That's my secret admission. I've bought several Chris Ware books, never read one of them. They always look real neat, but they always look so intricate and detailed, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to sit down with this one for some time, and I just never do.
94, another book that we did cover, The Great Cow Race by Jeff Smith from Bones 7 through 11.
See?
Yeah, this will be volume 2.
One of our top downloaded episodes of 2025. So if you missed that Bone review, go back and listen to it.
93, another book we covered, and this is where the recency bias thing comes in, because there's no way this is better than Demon Bear. It was good. It's The Zoo by Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta from Absolute Batman 1 through 6.
It's the hottest thing going right now, is that Absolute Batman.
Yeah.
Evidently, that those issue 1s of Absolute Batman, they're skyrocketing in price. I'm not one of those guys that pays attention to that kind of stuff, but it's kind of hard to miss out. I don't know.
I'm not one of those guys that pays attention, but I've been paying attention.
It has demanded Andy's attention.
Our number 1 downloaded episode of 2025. Go back and listen to us review Absolute Batman.
92 is a book that we should cover at some point, I hope. High Society by Dave Sim from Cerebus, 26 through 50.
You're going to drag me kicking and screaming. Kicking and screaming. You know what I do, J.A.? When I have a book in the dollar bins that I don't want anybody else to find, I put it in the Cerebus runs. Because you can see big chunks of the Cerebus. I just go into issue 59 or 60 or so, just drop it in right there. Nobody ever finds it.
It is probably the best. First 25, which are just random. Then there's High Society, and then there's Church and State Volume 1 and Volume 2. And then you can be done. You can be done with all of it because that's all the good stuff. But High Society is actually where it starts getting really good. So we might have to read it.
And then the last of the last is The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck by Don Rosa.
Yes.
Ran in Uncle Scrooge 285 through 296.
In comic circles, you always hear about the Carl Barks Uncle Scrooge, which I don't want to denigrate. But the Don Rosa stuff, I remember getting this from Andy and thinking who's Don Rosa? This story is excellent, The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck.
In the 80s, what jumps out is 87 Weapon X, a book we also covered by Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, and Vision, the Tom King Vision, is in there at 86.
That's another episode of the Last Comic Shop for sure.
And also Death of Speedy from Love and Rockets makes this chunk.
In the 70s, you had Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. and Al Williamson. Hush 2 probably did not make the list.
You think we should read Hush? Do you think we should? I mean, it is a greatest hits of Batman, but it's a greatest hits of Batman.
I'm going to ignore that and talking about Jay went right past Mutant Massacre. 75.
That is another episode of the Last Comic Shop. My goodness, it's almost like we know what we're doing here.
Into the 60s, and one of Andrew's favorite books, From Hell.
We had to cancel the show. We just said, no, we're not doing this anymore, ever again. I'm sure it's fine. Mikey Wood, who we have on the show often, is a huge fan of From Hell. It was like pulling teeth. It was really long. It was very, very drawn out. I did not like it. And the movie sucks. The movie's even worse.
Yikes. Anyway, Red Sun, which we read, makes this section, and Woman of Tomorrow from Supergirl, which I believe we have on tap for later on this
Yes, we do. So make sure that if you are wanting to hear that review, we will be pairing it with the Supergirl movie that'll be coming out later this year. So
The 50s see Secret Wars
yes,
by Jim Shooter et al., Planet Hulk, and
Another
The Court
good
of
one.
Owls, and Kree Skrull War.
yeah, I was surprised that like Secret Wars was so low compared to those, because I would actually rank Secret Wars above some of those. Like I would put
Oh, a lot of those.
Yeah.
like Secret Wars above Court of Owls. I would put it above Planet Hulk. I think Planet Hulk's great, but like honestly, my favorite issue of Planet Hulk is when he fights the Silver Surfer. That's such an iconic image, but everything else is kind of like,
See, I
Such
think
a-
Planet Hulk reads good as a story. Like, it's one of those event things that I really enjoyed the story of that one. Yeah, Death of Superman clocks in at 51. It's hard to
Yeah,
pass that one up.
but thank you for mentioning that. I did notice. How do you feel that in the 40s we have the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars? So that did better than the Jim Shooter Secret Wars.
to be blunt, I do feel that 2015 Secret Wars is actually a better written event. There's an actual point to it. Like the story of Reed versus Doom in that has personal stakes. There's a lot of great moments. Oh man, when Emperor God Doom rips Thanos' skull and backbone out of his body. So good.
But that's about where it ends. I mean, because in the 40s, you also have some questionable, like Tom King's Mr. Miracle 45, House of X Powers of 10 41.
Yeah.
This is starting to be questionable
In terms of ranking,
in
like,
terms
they're
of
good
where
to-
they rank. They're all good
Exactly.
storylines.
They're
but-
all good stories, but they should have been in different order for sure. I agree. Mr. Miracle's way higher than most of those other books.
Yeah. The Golden Age comes in at 40. We did that one, right?
Yeah, we
We
did.
did. Yeah.
Another great book in the last Comic Shop archives.
And then in the 30s, you have The Death of Gwen Stacy,
Yes.
and one that's probably in Chad's heart or not. I don't know. Return of Barry Allen.
Yes. I love so many of the 30s. You got John Cassaday and Warren Ellis with Planetary. You've got the Suture Saga by Walt Simonson in there. Man, the 30s hit hard.
The Electra Saga by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson.
I want to read
And-
that. Can I put in like a request that somebody pick that at some point? I don't know if I'll ever do it because it's still Daredevil and I'm not going to use one of my picks for a Daredevil book, but I'm hoping that someday we can just read some of that classic Frank Miller original run of Elektra. That stuff, I just want to read it on this show.
That's another one. But to answer Andy's comment earlier, number 30 as opposed to number 100, Life is a Weapon. It's the Hawkeye from Fraction
Yeah.
and Aja and Company.
Hawkeye. He hasn't had any other good. I don't know. I just know that Iron Fist is really tough. Until that book was, I was like, I don't care. The only time I cared about Iron Fist was when he was with Luke Cage. Like that's
true.
cool. That's cool. But that was the only book that was like Iron Fist by himself that I was like, yeah, I give a shit about Iron Fist now.
I just think Kate Bishop and Pizza Dog outrank Orson Randall.
Yep. Into the 20s, Winter Soldier makes the list by Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting, Michael Larkin, Michael Perkins, and Infinity Gauntlet, the original with Jim Starlin, George Perez, Ron Lim, and a bunch.
Both past episodes of The Last Comic Shop. Again, go out there, listen to our back catalog. All these books are there.
Coming of Galactus.
It's number 20. That was this year with the Fantastic Four movie.
Brian Cronin must be a fan of the show. Or just a fan of good comics like us.
And then 19, right, with a bullet, Days of Future Past. Great storyline.
2 issues. Think of how much impact those 2 issues have had on comic books in the X-Men.
And we continue to have, it continues to just be hit after hit of things we've covered. V for Vendetta, Craven's Last Hunt.
Perfect Strangers with Balky, Bart Tuckamoose. Or wait, no, that's Invincible. My bad.
So we have to get to Love and Rockets. Let's get to our top 10. What is in the top 10 books, J.A.?
Okay, well, you've got Year One, which we covered on the show.
Yeah, that's good.
Mouse, which we covered on the show.
Yeah, also good.
Watchmen, which we covered on the show.
Yeah, that's all right.
Dark Knight Returns, which we have yet to cover on the show.
That's for our 300th episode. Make sure you're rate, reviewing, and subscribing so you don't miss our 300th episode. I think sometime in September.
Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Dark Phoenix saga, which we also haven't covered on the show yet.
Now, that one we should. If anybody wants to throw that one out there, I wouldn't mind reading that again.
Yeah, what Jay conveniently left off the list.
I left it for you, sir. I know my audience.
There you go.
No.
There's 2 out of the top 10 that I take umbrage with. One is The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Great story. I don't think it's a top 10 comic.
Okay.
And then Kingdom Come clocks in at number 8. And Andy and I are going rounds in the text thread.
I'm not even that big of a fan of that book, Chad.
Because it's not even that good.
But I do think that it's very important to comics, and I do think it's very important to a lot of people.
Just because it's important doesn't mean it's any good.
Yeah, this is exactly my argument, though. So many people think it's good. They're putting it number 8 of all comic books. All the comic book runs. They're putting it at 8. That spot should go to 1,500 other stories before Kingdom Come, which is a glorified Where's Waldo with pretty gouache artwork.
Yes.
Well, if you want to hear Chad's full thoughts on Kingdom Come, make sure that you're checking out our past episode. It only dropped like 3 weeks ago, so it's still fresh.
Overrated. Overrated.
And we gotta get to Love and Rockets. We'll be right back with more Last Comic Shop right after this. Again, if there's any books that we said that we haven't covered but you want us to, leave us some comments. Until then, it's Love and Rockets right after this.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at bcwsupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
Hello, Internet. It's George from Shortbox Summary. I started going to the comic shop every week when I was a kid back in 2004, and I thought it was a golden era for the medium. While my first love is comics, my second love is the 2000s. So please join me as I revisit the mid-2000s comic book scene to figure out if the books were good or if I was just 15. This is a retrospective show that takes a look back at Marvel, starting with Avengers Disassembled and talking about the movies, music, TV, sports, and everything in between that made that era what it was. If you like the Last Comic Shop podcast, please give Shortbox Summary a listen, because I like the Last Comic Shop podcast, and I invite those guys on as much as I possibly can. Hope to see you soon, true believers.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And like I mentioned earlier, we are going off the beaten path for one of those books that I personally had never read before. It's something that people have talked about for years and years and years. And we're trying it out today. So we're reading Jamie Hernandez, Maggie the Mechanic, a Love and Rockets book. So J.A., tell us more about the edition that we are reading.
So we are reading Volume 1 from Fantagraphics, called Maggie the Mechanic by Jamie Hernandez. As mentioned earlier, Love and Rockets is a comic book series that was done by the Hernandez brothers, Gilbert, Jaime, and Mario, with the bulk of the stories being told either by Gilbert or by Jaime, but they didn't cross over. So Gilbert would do a bunch of stories, most recognizably the Palomar series, and then Jaime would do a bunch of stories, most recognizably the Locas stories. So we read the earliest Locas stories with Maggie the Mechanic and a whole cast of characters. And Andrew is going to try to do a 10-cent synopsis because there are a lot of stories. It's a lot of vignettes, though the characters do sort of progress and grow a bit.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head with this 10-cent synopsis is ultimately at the end of the day, Love and Rockets becomes kind of a slice of life book where like they just kind of tell random stories with the same cast of characters, kind of like a sitcom, kind of like a TV show or whatever. This is 11 issues of stories. And gosh, there's a lot of stories, but they primarily revolve around a girl named Maggie, who is a mechanic. She's a pro mechanic, which in this world is like being a celebrity, I guess. You get sent on these jobs out to the weird places of the world, like to these jungles with dinosaurs to work on rockets that used to fly over places to bring stuff. I gotta say that was the story that kind of lost me a little bit. But Maggie lives with her roommate, Hopi. She kind of has a little bit of a crush on another pro mechanic we meet early named Grace. Grace works for a dude named Duke. Eventually they have a friend named Penny who used to have a relationship with Grace. Shrugs, but mostly she hangs out with like this billionaire named H.R. Costigan. Yes, but he has horns. He has horns on his head, and he has lots and lots of money. And eventually there's a storyline where they go to his mansion and they just get lost. And that's actually when this series started turning around for me, because I was like, oh, I kind of like this story. There's professional wrestlers involved, like Bull Marie and Rena. And there's somebody they live with named Izzy, who's like a depressing goth girl before she was like goth was a thing. It's more kind of like punk at this point. There's another story where they go to some other country run by this guy named Dr. Beaky. There's a bomb that goes off and they go into the sewers for a little while and then they end up in the wastelands and Race is looking for him with this reporter. There's like a super cool bodyguard, which I thought was awesome. Her name was Demonia. She just had an awesome look and they changed their hair constantly. If you think I'm all over the place with this 10-cent synopsis, it's because the series was all over the place. So, a lot of stuff.
I have questions.
Sure.
Now, we read the Fantagraphics edition that collects all this stuff. I think the book we read was published in 2007. And so how were these stories originally published? Like, were they all like one by one in a magazine? Were they their own devoted magazines? Were there other things packed in there? Like,
it's the first 11 issues, but just the Jamie Hernandez parts of that 11 issues, because part of each issue would also then be a Gilbert Hernandez story. So you got 2, I think, per magazine issue, because it wasn't like Jaime put out 11 issues and then the next 11 issues were Gilbert's issues.
That's the downside to the collected edition.
They didn't put it together, so you don't get sort of an omnibus version of it. You're getting the Locas stories or the Palomar stories.
Yeah.
For those folks that may or may not know, I have an older brother who's been kind of like my comic book guru throughout my entire life. Now, he was a fan of Love of Rockets. I was reading it when it was coming out originally, way back in the 80s. It hit about the time he was in high school, and it was like the indie thing for him. And so I had to ask him, I said, does this ever get good? Because I was struggling with this dinosaur and rocket story. I didn't know what the point of the book was. I was falling asleep most of the time because there's a lot of text and I didn't know who any of the characters were. I didn't know why they were there. And he said that was part of the fun, is that when you picked up an issue, it was kind of like you were just thrown in and you kind of had to figure some stuff out. And whether you did or not was part of like the initiation into the Love and Rockets Club. Like, if you figured it out and found some way to connect with it, then, like, you were one of the cool kids. If you didn't, then you picked up that issue, and then you just never picked up another issue again. And so, were you both in the same boat with me, that you didn't know what was going on?
The first couple of stories I was like, what are we reading? It only started to hit for me when they went to the jungle, though that was heavy lifting because it was essentially told in letter form. Maggie was writing letters to tell all her friends back in Hoppers what she was doing in the jungle, working on this downed rocket ship next to a dinosaur, which never moved. I was so confused by that. But that was interesting, and that kind of got me into it because it was a long, it went over several parts, and so
it had tiny writing. It was all like handwritten. I swear those text boxes were growing on the trees. Like they grew that. That was their major export of that jungle was text box. Because there were so many and just tiny print.
For context, the story with the bomb where they go before they go into the sewer. How late was that?
That was like towards the end.
Yeah, I really didn't like it until then.
Okay.
Well, there were so many tiny stories. I'm like, so the collection we read has 30 different stories across 277 pages. I struggled mightily through the first couple. And I think I'm with you, Jay. The dinosaur story where she's writing letters, that's where it became like a story to me, as opposed to the little vignettes, which I was struggling to get into. But it wasn't until like, oh my goodness, we're like 2/3 of the way through when we get to the story arc where there's somebody's trying to blow up the place that they're working in. And I'm like, oh, now this seems like an action-adventure story.
Yes.
All the rest of it is just these little slice-of-life vignettes and, letters home. And
There's a story where Maggie teams up with this professional wrestler, this famous female professional wrestler.
And beat by cheating.
she used the ropes.
But it's kind of like her hero. So she gets to like hang out with her hero a little bit. Again, they go to this place to fix something. Because that seems like both the jungle story and then this other story. They're similar stories. They go to a place and then to fix something as like the MacGuffin, but then they end up not fixing anything. They go into this hangar and it blows up because there's revolutionaries that want to overturn this weird guy, Dr. Beaky. And so everybody thinks they're dead, but they actually escaped into like a trench or something and then have to climb through these sewer into the desert or something. And
Rita wants to stay dead.
Yes.
I don't know.
It's the price of fame. Like I got that part. She was talking about like how like she doesn't get to do anything cool anymore because everybody knows who she is and this and that. She just wants to disappear and start anew. And I get that part. I love this story again about this mansion. There's a story about a mansion where they just get lost in this mansion, and like there's like
I'm so confused. They just show up at this guy's house to borrow $50, and then they live there for a month. What kind of sense does that make?
But I did want to ask about the art. Because regardless of whether or not I struggled with this story, one thing I didn't struggle with whatsoever was the art. If I didn't understand the text boxes and this, I did really enjoy the art throughout this entire series. I loved the different costumes. I did the parade of characters. There was always something new and fresh just behind the next corner. You turn the page and you may not have known where you were, but you were going to kind of see something cool. And it all seemed kind of new wavy. Like I could see why this was the hip freshness of that time, because it really is like Depeche Mode.
Well, like Visage?
The alt rock or
new wave,
pre-punk.
Yeah, the new wave electronic. It had such a punk vibe to it, and even Hopi's a member of a punk band, which I kind of thought was kind of cool. I was hoping for a little bit more of that. They spend a few moments there every 10 seconds, but then they just go away from it, which I was like, Yeah,
it's more characters that look very similar that don't really do anything. And then they tell a story about a guy who was like, I was in love with Hopi, who I don't think we saw ever.
Speedy? No, we see Speedy once. Is Speedy's the brother of Hopi? Speedy's
the brother of Izzy.
Oh, he's the brother of Izzy. I knew there was some brothers going on somewhere. But
this guy's like Lloyd. He just shows up for a 3 or 4 page story and talks about how he was friends with these girls, and then they disappeared, and then they showed up again, and then he fell in love with one, and then she disappeared.
And then towards the end, there was an interesting subplot about Maggie eating like too many sandwiches and having to go through pant sizes, which was kind of...
That happens.
She gains weight fast.
It happens. It does. Yeah. Like overnight, she goes out, she leaves the desert and she's like, I haven't eaten anything in this desert. I need to eat all the sandwiches, which is fine. It is what it is. Not shaming or anything. It's just, it's over like the course of like the last 20 pages. Like it's like totally different character. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, that was something I struggled with, how things would just kind of happen. And like you're checking in with these characters' lives, but you never got all the connective tissue.
Yeah. And I also think what is lost, because we didn't continue on, but from what I understand, we were reading the very beginning of Jaime's sort of run with these characters, and as he continued, they changed, and he changed the stories he wanted to tell. So this first ones are very sort of sci-fi, more cyberpunky. You've got these sort of tank girl elements where they're working on starships and their hovercrafts and whatnot. And you know, it was all about Maggie's mechanics work, and you pull away from that as you go on into volumes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The more later on, he's more focused just on the individual story. Their
not as
private
futuristic
lives. Yeah.
Well, you're right, though. I mean, but ultimately, I'm glad that we started here because you could tell they love the comic book medium. There's like one issue that's all about Maggie becoming a sidekick to some superhero for a little while, which I thought was a kind of an interesting side story. And there are other times when comic book-esque things, and I think that's where the sci-fi stuff comes in. This was appealing to folks that were picking those kind of books up on a regular basis. And then after it got popular, then he's like, oh, well, now I can tell whatever story I want. More of the slice of life stuff, which I guess resonated more with the audiences. I don't know. Weird book.
Yeah, and you brought this up earlier. The art is beautiful and super interesting. And, you know, I'm picking up a little bit of Steve Rude and a little bit of some classic Tothian art styles here. And I always thought it's such a weird thing for me to wrap my brain around. I think I did it wrong reading it in this collection. This is something I might have needed to parse out mag by mag as opposed to sitting down in like 2 sessions and hammering this out.
Yeah, I did feel that I wish we're trying to get this reading done within a week, and it's one of those books that it's just it works really well in sections. Like I really enjoyed that original The Mechanics story where she's in Africa or South America or somewhere.
Yeah,
she's in the jungle because you could read it in parts. I'd read a part and then I'd go away and I'd come back and I'd read a part. I think that works better because it is a lot. It's very wordy, very dense at times.
Well, let's get to our rating right after this commercial break and our recommendations. So stay tuned for our final thoughts on what we thought of Love and Rockets, Volume 1, Maggie the Mechanic, right after this.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
From Fantagraphics, the Santos Sisters Volume 1 hardcover collection. Compiling issues 1 to 5 of the hit indie comic book series. Join Amber and Alana, 2 ordinary girls with extraordinary powers, as they fight crime, date dumb guys, and try to stay sane in a world full of assassins, zombies, crazy ex-girlfriends, and more. A mix of Archie comics meet Love and Rockets, with a healthy dose of kick-ass action. Order your copy today.
And we are back to rate Maggie the Mechanic, which again was Locos Book 1, which collected stories from Love and Rockets Volume 1, issues 1 through 11, 13 through 15, Mechanics 1 and 2, and Anything Goes, which came out in February 2007, all 272 pages of Jamie Hernandez story and art. And it goes without saying that we're going to rate it 1 out of 4 locas.
Oh, not mechanics. Not the pro mechanics. I never understood that. Like, I got the pro wrestlers, but the pro mechanic, you got to join the pro mechanics.
And then they had like fan clubs.
Yeah. I mean, the one reporter is like, we got to follow race, chisel jaw. Like the classic hero, that race guy. Like, and I really did like the Penny stories. I don't know why, but I really like the Penny stories.
Is it because she's a blonde bombshell?
She wasn't blonde in some of the issues. Those first couple with the dinosaurs and stuff, that was very Savage Landy. That was very X-Men Savage Landy. It looked like Rogue a lot, hanging out in the Savage Land, Kitty Pryde. I see what you're saying, the J.A. I'm going to go first. As I said, I struggled mightily with this book to start. Very, very small text, lots of text boxes. There was one page where they were talking about Rena and the pro wrestler that Maggie looks up to, and they talk about her early career, and they condensed the entire career into one page, which was a lot of writing. And I don't know if I put that page down like 6 times because I was just like, this is a lot. You're throwing a lot at me. And like, do I care that much to read all of it? I don't know. I haven't got that far yet. And I think that was the struggle. Like, I hadn't had something to hook me. But then they went to this mansion. And the text boxes got smaller in terms of like the amount of stuff that was in each text box. And I read like 100 pages that day. Like, I was just like, I couldn't put it down. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, we're in this. We're in this now. Like, I'm doing it. So it became a lot more like a more traditional comic. And I won't lie that after that, I think it picked up. And to Chad's point, we got this really, really cool story where they went to Dr. Beaky's island. There was like an adventure and they had to escape. You know, were they going to die? Were they not going to die in the sewers and all this other jazz? It was pretty harrowing, and I liked it a lot. And I think I will say this, like, just like my brother who recommended that I read this at one point, he said, you just got to go in. You just got to jump in and know that you're not going to understand a lot of stuff. And if you can do that, you're going to have a lot of fun with Love and Rockets. So I got to give this like a solid, it's close to a 3. I'm going to give it a 2.95. I will, though, read more Love and Rockets because I did fall in love with these girls by the end of the story. And I kind of sort of wanted to see what happened to them after this. And if you get more of that slice of life stuff, that's the stuff I liked. And I think it's going to work better. Great, great art, though. Mwah! Love the art. Chad.
So yeah, I won't lie. I struggled with this one, and the art is beautiful. And I always thought like, oh, I could read a comic with great art and a so-so story and still really enjoy it. I don't know if that's true. After this, this is something where I could see Jaime Hernandez getting better as he goes throughout the course of this story. And it was once we got into some of the larger, longer form stories that I was able to enjoy it and enjoy the characters. And the art throughout, like we've all mentioned, it really is beautiful art. The facial expressions, the acting there, it really is killer. And they pack a lot into these pages too. And so for as much as I liked about it, there was also probably just as much that I wasn't crazy about in the lead up. Whether it was how wordy it was early on or how it would just jump from like one big idea to another big idea. And there were certain points where the time didn't seem to be linear. There's lots of like adult stuff. There's lots of nudity in here and things that I don't know if I needed it to be in there. I don't know. People will just be topless for no reason at certain points. Like I get that it's all part of this alternative scene sort of thing, but I don't know. Sometimes it just didn't connect for me. Like I said, I'm struggling to wrap my brain around this. I loved the Rena stuff. I thought her story was great. I don't know. I'm flipping through, try to work this out in my head. What to give it? I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's as great as it could be either. That's where I am in my head. We often talk about how, creative visions and sometimes the sum of the parts makes creators better. There's a part of me that would love to see Jaime Hernandez as an artist with someone else as the writer putting the stories together, just because I love the art so much. The art is a 4. But I think I'm going to settle in at a 2.75. for everything I liked, there was something that I was like, why did this happen? Or, something that kind of threw me a little bit. And I think part of my failings was just how I went about it, where I read it in like one or two big chunks. This is something that like you need to pick up a story and then come back to it in 2 months and read another story and, parse it out that way. And I guess the characters grow in real time too. So that's something I heard that would be neat to see later on down the road. So when I go back to Love and Rockets again, yeah, was this first go round, I could see the growing pains of it. Yeah.
All right, J.A., wrap us up.
Well, I'm not as prudish as Chad, so I had no problem with the half-naked art. Just gonna... And the art was beautiful. The art is a 4. Black and white, really stark. Either it would be very simplified with lots of use of shadow, or there were some other scenes where it's very, very detailed. Some of those jungle spreads I'm thinking of were incredible. The stories did grow on me. I think my biggest problem is that we only got Jaime's stuff, and I would have liked Fantagraphics to have put out an omnibus version of the original publications so that we could sort of read it the way it had originally been presented, where you got a Jaime story and a Gilbert story, because I think that also would have helped break up the 272 pages of the same thing over and over. It would have been nice to have some of those Palomar stories. So for that, less to do with the Maggie Mechanic story, but just how Fantagraphics has decided that they're going to allow people to read Love and Rockets, or how you can approach Love and Rockets now after the fact if you're not buying the original magazines. For that, I think it's a 275. It's really interesting. I'm glad we read it. I'd read some more of it. I want to read some Palomar stories to see what that's like, because that's, again, we only got half of this seminal work by these brothers because we only got Jaime's stories. We didn't get a chance to read any, and some of that is because this is what we chose to read, but this is how you'd have to buy 2 books if you want to get them. You can't just go out and find, I don't know if Fantagraphics has put out a trade paperback that has both the Locas and the Palomar stories, and that I really wish we had that. So yeah, 275.
All right. Well, it's time to get to recommendations for this week. These are other books in addition to Love and Rockets, which you can pick up at any of your local comic book shops, hopefully in a variety of different formats. I don't know if I've ever seen issues of Love and Rockets, but I have seen these collections. So definitely, if you're interested, pick up these Love and Rockets collections where you can find them. It is worth your time, and these are some other books that we hope are also worth your time. We're going to start off with Chad this week. Chad, what do you got for us?
Okay, I've stumbled across Love and Rockets magazines. There's one shop I go to that has their Buckmans. They have like a magazine section, and something else I plucked out of there, and it's Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor. So same spot where I'd found an issue or 2 of Love and Rockets is where I found this. It's from Mark Waid and Brian Hitch, and it was 3 issues from the Black Label format, where they have those larger, almost treasury-sized editions. And Lex Luthor is dying, and he wants Superman to help him find the cure, and Superman won't let him die. It's a fun story. It's worth your time. You also get Kevin Nolan on inks, where you get sort of like a retrospective of Cross, you get the Brian Hitch of it all, but then you get the Kevin Nolan feel to it. It's just an interesting exploration. So Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor. Pretty sure it's been collected at this point. But if you're just looking to explore some ideas similar to what happens when you pick up a Love and Rockets, it's worth your time.
Well, my recommendation this week is actually going to be another book in which I absolutely fell in love with the art. And it is also one that you could probably find in kind of more of the magazine section of your local comic book shop, especially in those back issues. It was a part of the Marvel graphic novel series that was released in the 1980s. This was volume 15. It is a book called The Raven's Banner. It was written by Alan Zelnitz, but the real reason that I picked it up is because of the Charles Vess art in this particular book. Now, if you don't know who Charles Vess is, I'm not going to tell you. I think you need to go out and find some books that Charles Vess has done. There's not many of them, but they're really, really gorgeous. There's a great Spider-Man one where he goes to Scotland. Oh gosh, I can't remember that one's name.
Spirits of the Earth?
But this particular one is a Tales of Asgard that doesn't have Thor in it. And so it really fit for this time of the year, this winter time. It made me feel, cozy as I was reading about Greyval Grimson, whose dad was Grim Magnus, and he was the guy that held the Raven's banner, which allowed all of the Asgardian warriors to win their battles against the giants. But the problem is, if you are the standard bearer of the Raven's banner, you're gonna die. And so Greyval's like, I don't want to die. He's being timid. He's being fearful. He doesn't want to live up to that noble job that his family has of being the ones that carry the Raven's banner. And so he eventually marries one of the Valkyries, and she's like, no, you got to do this. You got to get this Raven's banner back from the trolls, or else there's going to be another Ragnarok. And so he teams up with Balder and this otter warrior, like he's all furry and stuff. It's great. And they go in to fight the trolls, and Greyval eventually lives up to his family heritage and dies in battle, and he saves Asgard as a result of it. But it's good. You should read it because of the Charles Vess art. He's got a really interesting reimagination of Hela. I know that it's kind of hard to beat the classic Jack Kirby design of Hela, but just changing the colors from green to purple, it's pretty awesome. And he did all of it. He did the inks, he did the pencils, he did the colors, he designed all of the characters in this. And so if you like all that Thor jazz, this really will expand your horizons as in terms of that. And plus it's only like 66 pages. So it's a really easy read. J.A.
All right. Well, with the release of Rogue the Savage Land, I thought we need to have a throwback to a couple of really great Chris Claremont, Jim Lee, Uncanny X-Men issues, primarily 269 and 274, where Rogue goes to the Savage Land, ends up fighting Carol Danvers, Miss Marvel, and then gets it on with Magneto. That's right. Some steamy stuff is happening in the Savage Land as she's fighting without her powers in the land of dinosaurs and savagery. And you're right. That Maggie and the Mechanic storyline really reminded me of that. So the 5-issue miniseries Rogue the Savage Land is a homage and a throwback and a callback to those two really great Chris Claremont and Jim Lee stories that bookended the extinction agenda of the Uncanny X-Men.
Tim Seeley's the writer on that one, right?
On the new one.
The new one, yeah.
Yeah, Tim Seeley. Yep.
Yeah, I read that one. My only issue with it was they changed artists in a 5-issue miniseries. I can't remember the name of the artist who does the first couple issues, but let them finish it out. They're doing such a good job.
Well, one thing that we're hoping doesn't change in mid-podcast is us as the hosts of The Last Comic Shop. We're going to be around for a long time.
Unless Rogue needs somebody down in the Savage Land with her. And forget you guys.
That's right. Jay will be taking a long sabbatical. But
I'm just picturing Jay in one of those Kazar-style loincloths.
I am not, sir. But what I am picturing is everybody getting out to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, rate, reviewing, and subscribing so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes of The Last Comic Shop for the rest of 2026. We've got some great books, some of which we might, again, call back to that list we just talked about in the opening segment. Maybe we will read the Elektra saga. Maybe we will read the Dark Phoenix saga or Days of Future Past. We haven't done any of those books. We've got the Merry Marvel Marching Society coming up just in a couple weeks, 5 straight weeks of all Marvel books. I know my pick, but who knows what J.A. and Chad will pick for their books. So maybe we'll see some of these. You never know. But www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com is your way to make sure that you don't miss out on these episodes.
And while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the last comic shop, so we encourage everybody to get out there and support your local comic shops, whether that's by picking up things like Maggie the Mechanic, Love and Rockets Volume 1 from Fantagraphics Books. Maybe that's by picking up things like Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor from the DC's Black Label collection. Maybe it's picking things up like The Raven Banner, A Tale of Asgard with that sweet, sweet Charles Vess art inside, which I think they also teamed up for a Marvel Fanfare story, that same author, Alan Z. and Charles Vess.
Yeah.
So,
he doesn't have a ton of books, that Alan guy, but Charles Vess, you see him pick that book up. There you
go. Web of Spider-Man 1. Was that Charles Vess all the way through?
Yeah.
Greg LaRocque does the interiors. It's
right, but
cover.
that is a Charles Vess cover, and that is gorgeous.
And speaking of gorgeous things, it's Rogue in the Savage Land. Whether it was an X-Men 269 to 274 or the 5-issue miniseries from Tim Seeley and Company that came out last year, all that and more waits for you at your local comic shop. And then you can circle back to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, to find links to our socials and what other fun stuff, J.A.
As always, we have a link to our merch store where you can get t-shirts, coffee mugs, tote bags, hats, shorts, and this week only, a mechanic's belt.
That's right.
Bunch of tools.
No jorts. Can't get jorts yet. Wish we could have gone that with the mechanic's belt. Gotta get some Last Comic Shop jorts.
Those need to be made, sir.
They do. They do. I don't know how you get the logo on them, but I'll figure it out.
Iron on logos.
One thing we're hoping that you do figure out is how to save money on all your comic book supplies. Chad, there's a great way that everybody can do that every single day, right?
That's right, by going to bcwsupplies.com using promo code LCSPOD. That's right, LCSPOD saves you 10% off your purchase and kicks a little bit back to us here at the Last Comic Shop podcast. So get your bags, boards, boxes, other collectible bric-a-brac at bcwsupplies.com, promo code LCSPOD.
And until next week, when we hope that you'll join us again, I was the host, Danny Larson. I was joined by Jay Scott and the wonderful Chad Smith. And we hope that you stay safe, stay warm. It is still the dead of winter. And remember that, hey, Valentine's Day is coming up. Buy somebody some love and some rockets and some boots. There was a whole story about just trying to get $50 for this pair of boots. So find somebody that you love and buy them boots so they don't have to live at a mansion. And for a month. A whole month. It happened. It happened in the story. It happened.
So much didn't make sense to me.
Comic Shop Podcast was a 2026 Black Angus production.